Pileggi Technical Services, your computers and electronics concierge service. Welcome back. I just decided to show a little preview of my lab tonight, show you a couple of projects I got going on. Here we have a computer that we're doing Windows updates on for a customer. We also have a project I'm working on here, which is a computer power supply modification. I'm actually replacing the wires in it with these larger gauge cables. I believe this is a 12 gauge and this is a 10 gauge. I have 3 of them. Lighters over here for heat shrink, because all these ends are nicely heat shrunk. I have a soldering iron here. You can see if I'm resoldering and unsoldering here. Move the camera over, you can see my spools of wire. This is the old stuff that came off. You know, this is just your typical computer power supply. You can see the ends here have this little crimped piece on it that they've then soldered in. I've already modified this once before in the past. That's why you can see all the black cables together here, and it was hooked up to this barrier strip. This is actually going to be hooked up directly to a set of banana plugs, which are just hooked up. You know, it's going to be one for 12 volt, yeah, a set for 12 volt, a set for 5 volt, and a set for 3.3 volt, just like every typical computer contains. If I come around over here, you can see my box of parts, all individually separated for the most part. I have some amplifier kits that I put together that are waiting to go into some finished projects when they're done, as well as a whole set of resistors, you know, some components in these little mini bins. This is a bunch of different LEDs of different colors, some jumper wire for some project boards, some potentiometers, more LEDs. You know, this is more of parts that I use to build a lot of different kits with. And we have a nice label machine. And if I pick up here a little bit, you'll see, just listening to a little bit of Dave Jones and the EEV blog while I'm working here tonight. And this is my main computer. This used to be a studio computer, but I've sold all my studio equipment. I pan back around to my other desk, which is my all-around, you know, electronics and computers workbench. There's a server down the bottom there. There's another computer that I just have on the side that I'm working on doing something with, not quite sure what, but there's a KVM switch that I hook up to the keyboard and mouse in that drawer there, and the monitor over here, and it's a 4-port switch, which is nice. I have my tablet over here charging, but that's there for reference. Little handmade wire wheel. Audio system that I came up with, which is just a little amplifier with a speaker. I use that for test referencing things. Of course, we have a nice cold Rolling Rock sitting off to the side over here, because it is Saturday night, and why not. My friend Dave's Heiko. This is the FX888D. I have one of my own actually coming this week, which is really cool. I was always looking to get a new soldering station, just wasn't sure what to go with, but after using his, I'm pretty convinced. You can hear my fan going in the background. That's just a custom modified computer fan. That's one of those Delta fans that when you run full 12 voltage to it, it pulls like 2.5 amps, and it's pretty loud, but it draws a good amount of air out of that, you know, makeshift tunnel that I have there. And that's just screwed to a piece of cardboard just wedged into the window over there. This is a custom light that I made. It used to have a 120 volt, I think 60 watt bulb in it, but now has a 10 watt LED with a big ass heat sink behind it that came from an old computer. There's actually a 12 volt inverter inside this metal case, which actually has a formed, I guess it's a cast iron base for weight, and there was just enough room to put that power supply in it, which is really neat. And it came with the plug in the front of it, and also has a phone jack on the side. It's one of those ones like they'd have in like a hotel that you could put your laptop on and hook it to. It's sitting on a wood box that right now is just holding things, but this is actually I have more of those. This is actually what this power supply is going to sit into, and that's going to sit there as a bench power supply. There is another one back here, and again, these came from computers, and you can see on top of it, barely in the dark back there, are the sets of the banana jacks, and that's basically powering through that black convoluted tubing back there, my router on the top and the switch on the bottom there, and that's my whole internet section between the modem and those two pieces. The good part about this is there's a switch that I can use to shut that whole power supply off with, and that will kill the whole internet system. So if I want to reset it, I can just shut that off. And also I have this fan hardwired to that with its own separate switch, and that power supply is kind of just dedicated to that. You can also see that orange light there. That's basically there's a 5-volt standby section of that power supply that even if it's off, as long as it's plugged in and physically turned on through the AC side of it, that USB port is active and you can use it to charge your phone or whatnot, which is what I do. And then I actually have a breakout board, so if I want to connect other things to that 5-volt source, I could. And then of course there's a secondary switch which actually turns the power supply on its own, which is actually what this switch here is. So the way this thing works is when you plug it into the AC, it automatically comes on a standby, and I'm actually wiring up a red LED onto that 5-volt standby rail, so you'll know that this is actually hooked up to the AC source, I should call it. And then once you kick this switch on, it'll actually turn the power supply on. This is just like pushing the power button in the front of your computer, except that's a soft switch which basically just sends a signal to this. I'm actually using a hard power on and off, so this will shut off as soon as you kill this. Yeah, and instead of using the twisted wires, I went with this heavier gauge wire. And you can see the case is just sitting down the floor over here next to my garbage, and that's what that's all going to go in. And this is all from just basically recycled parts. The front of this face, you could see this is just the side of a computer case, and I left it where the grill side is going to line up with that, and then there's going to be the pairs of BNC, or not, I'm sorry, not BNC, the banana clip on the front. And also I have a voltmeter readout screen that I plan on cutting out and putting in the front of this with some kind of a selector knob. May even put, like A, B, C, and then D would be if I wanted to plug test leads into it and use it to do another input, something like that. I'll figure that part out later on, but yeah, this is just a quick around my shop / update for projects I'm working on this weekend. Well, thanks for watching. Here's a little more update of that project. Today I mounted all the jacks, the USB port, the 2 LEDs. This is the switch to turn the actual power supply itself on and off, and then this is the mains power switch. So that's all ready to go. If I flip it over, you'll see a lot of them was just really filled in with a lot of hot glue, which is my best friend when it comes to making these custom things I build. I have everything marked and labeled. This is just temporary like this. I just have it so I can kind of assemble this and leave this off for now until I can figure out how exactly I'm going to implement it. As you can see, I have a plan here for a voltmeter with a set of extra taps up here and some kind of maybe 4-position switch to select between the different inputs. One of these over here is a negative output. This is actually negative 12 volts, where the rest of them are all positive. And I got to get a different color to designate this. And then also above it here, I'm going to put a ground point, which will ground to this faceplate and also ground to the cage that's in here, which the power supply also, the mains power connects to. That's all I really have for now. Oh, I also have labels on all the pieces, what they go to. And then there's also a binding post, barrier strip set on here. And then there's the 5 volt supply, standby voltage, and then the power good signal. And this is what's going to have the two LEDs connected to, and then also the USB connection. So I'll have this mounted in the case, and then I got a couple more things to do before I can call this an officially finished build, but I'm going to put it together tonight and give it a good test. Now what we're looking at here is some pictures of the original IEC jack on the back of this unit, and you can actually see this is a power switch that I found from another device that actually has the same connector. Now it's important to note that this is the North American wire standard, with your white being your neutral and your black being your hot, or your line, depending on how you want to call it. And then on your European, they have the brown being the line and the blue being the neutral, and that's actually the case throughout the rest of the supply, as you can see. And this is that connector here that these connect to. Now what I went ahead and did was swapped these out, reversed them over, and I cut this, or actually desoldered it from the switch, and I desoldered these shorter leads, and went ahead and matched it up. And this is just pictures of the progress, but here's what I got. I went ahead and put a little bit of heat shrink on the end just to keep it nice. This will be painted over with liquid electrical tape just to keep it from shorting out. Now, this is something that they don't normally do because you don't open these things up. There's no reason to worry about having anybody getting shocked, but I'm not going to play any games with this when I put this together. Everything's already got sheet shrink on it everywhere. I mean, even the ground straps are pretty nicely done. So that's just a finishing step that makes sense. This is a pretty unique IAC socket in that it has these input protection pieces on here. I think these are MOVs. I'm not sure exactly what that is 100%. I thought it was some kind of a capacitor, but I'm not really too sure. Could be his fuse, or I'm not really sure. I have to look up the part numbers. I haven't really bothered to do it yet. But you can see I changed it to the wire code that makes it easy for me to remember. Also, I used the other side of that cord. This is the one that has the plug on it, obviously. The other side was I basically hacked the end off of it that had the plug on it, and just used a short section of it, because this has to go from the back of the case up forward to the front of the case where I have this switch, and this is the toggle that I decided to go with, back to the back of the case where this hooks to the power supply. These were really short. Now I could have went ahead and just got regular 18 gauge stranded black wire and just ran from here to the switch and back again, and then just did a short white wire from here in, but I decided to bring the neutral up front just in case I want to put some kind of an indicator light, or I have another use for it up front. Maybe I want to put I don't know, an outlet up front, a small like panel mount outlet, or who knows what, but I wanted to have the capabilities of having that there, so that's why I did that. And again, here's the heat shrink. I love using heat shrink. It's heat shrink and solder, I think, is one of the best connections you can get, in my opinion. I'm sure there's others, but I was never a fan of those crimp connectors with those butt connectors. That just seemed like, some place that a corrosion could happen, like in an automobile. So you're better off just soldering the wire by hand. But anyway, I will show that I also have the panel ready to go. I have the holes mounted in it. You can see the little display that I have fits perfectly in it. This one's just a little tight. See? Now I'm not sure if I want it to pop out like that, or if I want to recess just right. I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't figured out yet if I also want to put maybe a piece of plexiglass from behind, and then have that LCD screen behind. And it's not an LCD screen, LED readout, I should say, behind the plexiglass on each of these, or what. But the one thing I have to figure out is how to mount this, because as you can see, where the LED raises up off the board, there's these little ears, and that's where I'm going to mount it. So I had to find some kind of either a spacer that will, you know, take up the distance here. So this will actually sit back like this, and something will fill this little space. Or mount it straight in like that. The only thing about that is these wires, the way they did them, come out the front, like in this little gap. So it won't sit just right. So you're still going to need some kind of a spacer. But maybe a couple washers doubled up will do that, or who knows. I have to see. I want to try to take this to the hardware store and see if I can find a little bolt and nut to fit that, and get a set of them. That would do it. And they may even have spacers. There's actually a really good hardware store down the road from where I live. It's not a Home Depot, Lowe's, one of those chain stores. It's a True Value, you know, privately owned True Value store. But the guy has a really nice fastener section in there, and it's pretty impressive store actually for a little independent store. But I'll take this there probably in the morning and see if I can find something. And I still have to wait for the other two of these to come in. And that should pretty much do it for this project for now. The only other thing I'm thinking of doing to this is having some kind of an adjustable power tap. And I've already looked at a couple units on eBay that allow me to do that, and I have a lot of real estate on top. So I might just do that. So for now, I'm gonna just put this together as best as I can, and we'll see where we get with that.